Right now, the absolute smartest tech billionaires on Earth are racing to build this, digital brain of the
Yeah,
future.
AI infrastructure.
Exactly. But they've all just kind of collided with this massive, incredibly physical wall. Because the ethereal cloud, as it turns out, runs on a very dense, heavy metal that we literally have to blast out of the dirt.
Right. It is just a phenomenal irony when you think about it. The exact same people who spent, really the last 2 decades optimizing code and building entirely weightless software, they are suddenly realizing that their entire roadmap depends on old school, heavy industrial geology. It's
Yeah.
a metal that honestly hasn't seen this much mainstream excitement since probably the
Right,
1970s.
which is wild.
Yeah.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the June 2026 uranium market today.
And there was a lot to unpack.
Oh, absolutely. So for you listening right now, whether you're managing a portfolio or maybe prepping for a board meeting or just, insanely curious about the collision of artificial intelligence and global energy, our mission today is to figure out why this historically niche commodity has morphed into what looks like the most structurally sound investment case in the world right now.
Yeah, it really is.
We are pulling from a massive stack of institutional research for this, including market intelligence from Goldman Sachs, the industry standard UXC, and quite a flurry of recent policy updates.
Yeah, and I think it's important to set the stakes right out of the gate here. For you listening, the overarching narrative here isn't about a temporary market blip. It's not some, speculative frenzy on a message board.
Right.
We are looking at multi-decade mathematical certainties. We have a scenario where this immovable, completely locked-in demand base is crashing headfirst into an entirely inflexible supply wall.
It's a math problem.
Exactly. And to understand the scale of that crash, you have to look at who is actually buying this material right now.
Yeah, let's start with demand, because if Microsoft and Meta are effectively writing blank checks for guaranteed 20-year power, the immediate next question is, well, what exactly are we putting into these reactors?
Right.
Because if you look at the supply chain, the demand is no longer just this slow, predictable math equation from traditional utilities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the baseline data shows we have 438 operable nuclear reactors globally right now.
With 74 more currently under construction.
Right, 74. And the geographic concentration of those new builds is just staggering. 37 of those under construction are in China alone.
Which is a complete rewiring of the global energy map. China isn't just building reactors to, keep the lights on. They are treating nuclear energy as strategic infrastructure.
Like military defense.
Exactly, on par with semiconductors or defense. They're targeting 200 gigawatts of nuclear capacity by 2035. And to put that in perspective, that requires building roughly 150 additional reactors. That one country alone is going to see its uranium demand jump from around 13,000 tons a year to over 30,000 tons by the end of this decade.
That is just massive.
Yeah, and globally, the projections show total uranium demand rising from roughly 67,000 tons today to over 150,000 tons by 2040.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the utility demand, as huge as it is, that's just the foundation, right?
Right, the baseload.
The real accelerant here is the AI factor.
Mm.
U.S. data center demand is absolutely skyrocketing. These AI facilities are essentially like always-on mega factories.
Yes.
They aren't just retrieving a few search queries like the old internet. They are running these massive continuous computational models that demand an astronomical amount of electricity.
And because these AI models don't sleep, they need absolute true baseload power. You cannot pause a billion parameter training run just because, the wind stopped blowing in West Texas or the sun went down in Nevada.
Right, the cloud doesn't care about the weather.
Exactly. Renewables are obviously crucial for the broader energy transition, but they have hard physical limitations. Solar generally has a 25% capacity factor, meaning it produces its maximum output about a quarter of the time.
Okay.
Wind sits around 35%. Nuclear, however, has a capacity factor of over 90%. Once it is on, it stays on.
Which perfectly explains the headlines we've been seeing lately. We have Meta stepping up with an agreement for 7.8 gigawatts of nuclear capacity.
Unbelievable scale.
Yeah, and then we have Microsoft signing a 20-year agreement with Constellation Energy for 1.6 gigawatts.
Mm-hmm.
And that famously includes an 800-megawatt dedicated restart of 3 Mile Island Unit 1 by 2028.
Right.
But I actually have to push back here a little bit. Hasn't the global narrative been about moving away from nuclear power since Fukushima? Like, why this sudden massive pivot back, and why are tech billionaires suddenly getting into the utility business?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the hyperscalers are introducing an entirely new economic paradigm to the nuclear fuel cycle.
How so?
So, traditional utilities operate on razor-thin margins, right? And they are highly sensitive to fuel prices. Tech giants operate on a totally different plane. They are prioritizing supply certainty over price.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when you are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on AI infrastructure, you simply cannot risk a power disruption because natural gas prices spiked or the regional grid got strained.
Right, the cost of downtime is just too high.
Exactly. They're essentially telling the market, look, we don't care about the traditional cyclical patterns of utility companies. We need power, and we will pay whatever premium is necessary to lock it in for 20 years.
Wow, so we have a situation where traditional utilities are aggressively building out their fleets, and the richest companies in human history are simultaneously demanding dedicated reactors of their own.
Yep.
Which immediately brings up the brutal arithmetic of how we actually fuel this renaissance.
Okay.
Because according to the data in these reports, the fuel for all this new demand is already mathematically short.
Yeah, and short doesn't quite capture the severity of the deficit here. Let's look at the core equation governing the planet right now.
Okay.
Global primary mine production, meaning the actual physical uranium we dig out of the ground every year, is roughly 140 million pounds. But the current reactor needs globally sit at approximately 200 million pounds.
Wait, that is a 60 million pound shortfall every single year.
Every single year.
That's a 30% deficit before we even plug in a single new AI data center or turn on any of those new Chinese reactors.
Exactly. And deficits of that magnitude, they compound rapidly. Goldman Sachs recently updated their models, and they forecast a 1.914 billion pound cumulative deficit from 2025 to 2045.
Almost 2 billion pounds.
Right. And UXC estimates 2.1 billion pounds of uncovered utility requirements by 2040. And just to clarify, uncovered means we have reactors that will be operational, that mathematically require fuel to function, but they currently have absolutely no contract in place to acquire that fuel.
Which is terrifying if you run a utility. But wait, if the math is that dire, how have the lights stayed on this whole time? Where did the uranium actually come from over the last decade if we weren't mining enough of it?
Well, we survived on a very unique but highly finite cushion of secondary supplies. After Japan shut down its reactor fleet following Fukushima in 2011, it created this massive glut of inventory.
Right, nobody was burning it.
Exactly. But more importantly, we had programs downblending military-grade weapons into commercial nuclear fuel.
Wait, from like nuclear warheads?
Yes. Through initiatives like the Megatons to Megawatts program, the industry was taking weapons-grade, highly enriched uranium from decommissioned Cold War nuclear warheads, mixing it with natural uranium and turning it into utility fuel.
That is incredible. We were literally taking missiles meant to destroy cities and using them to power the streetlights in Chicago.
Literally. It's an
Yeah.
amazing peace dividend. But it also severely distorted the market. The market was flooded with this pre-existing secondary uranium. Utilities saw this, watched the price of the commodity crash, and decided, hey, we don't need to sign long-term contracts with miners anymore.
Why buy the cow when the milk is free, basically?
They just bought cheap spot market inventory year after year.
Which brings us to the 13-year contracting crisis.
Yeah.
The research notes that utilities usually contract their uranium 2 to 5 years ahead of when they actually need to load it into the reactor.
Yep.
But for 13 consecutive years from 2012 to 2025, they undercontracted below replacement rates. In 2025, only 116 million pounds were placed under long-term contracts, which is tens of millions of pounds below what they actually burned through.
Yeah, it's a massive hole.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, it's like someone relying entirely on the canned goods in their pantry for 13 years without ever going to the grocery store, just sort of assuming the store will be perfectly stocked whenever they finally get hungry enough to go.
And, well, it's actually worse than just an empty pantry. It's an empty pantry, the grocery store is on fire, and 3 of your richest tech billionaire neighbors just bought all the canned goods that were left.
Oh, man.
Because those secondary stockpiles and downblended warheads are now effectively gone. We are no longer running on borrowed time. We are running on borrowed supply that no longer exists.
Wow. But I think the natural reaction anyone listening to this is probably having right now is, well, if the grocery store is empty, the price is going up, just build another store.
Right.
Just increase production and dig more uranium. But the reports make it very clear that this is a massive fallacy.
It is, yeah. It is physically and legally impossible in the near term. You cannot simply turn on a uranium mine like a faucet.
Right.
In the United States, if you are using in situ recovery, which is
Yep.
a method that basically dissolves the uranium in the ground and pumps it to the surface, it takes 7 to 10 years just to go from initial permitting to first production.
And that's the fast way, right?
That is considered the fast method, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the slow method, because the timeline here is staggering. In Canada's Athabasca Basin, where I understand the highest grade uranium on Earth sits, the reports say it takes 10 to 15 years to go from discovery to commercial output.
Easily.
I want to dig into the why there, because it's not just bureaucratic red tape, is it?
No, not at all. It's extreme engineering. You have to overcome monumental geological challenges. For instance, in the Athabasca Basin, the uranium is often trapped under massive high-pressure water aquifers.
Okay.
If you just drill a traditional shaft and start digging, the mine will instantly flood catastrophically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So to mine safely, companies have to execute a process called ground freezing. They drill hundreds of holes around the deposit and pump freezing brine deep underground to literally freeze the earth solid.
Wait, literally freeze the earth?
Yes. They create an impenetrable ice wall before they can remove a single ounce of dirt.
That is insane. So it's not a factory where you just hire more workers and add a night shift. It's more like trying to turn an ocean liner or, trying to grow a 100-year-old oak tree, no matter how much capital you throw at it. The geology and the chemistry dictate the timeline.
Exactly.
But surely, if the price of uranium spikes high enough, the biggest players in the world can figure out how to accelerate this.
You'd think so, but even the titans of the industry are failing to hit their targets right now. Kazatomprom, the state-owned company in Kazakhstan that produces roughly 40% of the world's primary supply, they deliberately cut their 2026 production guidance by 10%.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that removed about 6.8 million pounds right off the market.
But why would the world's largest producer cut production in a rising price environment? That seems entirely counterintuitive.
It does, but it comes down to a mix of physical constraints and market strategy. Physically, they are dealing with a severe shortage of sulfuric acid, which is absolutely required for their extraction process. And sulfuric acid is heavily used in global agriculture for fertilizer. So Kazakhstan basically has to compete with the global food supply chain to secure the chemicals needed to dissolve the rock.
And I'm guessing food usually wins that fight?
Agriculture often wins, yeah. And then strategically, Kazatomprom has openly stated they are shifting to a value over volume strategy. They know they control the market bottleneck, so they have zero incentive to flood the market and suppress their own margins.
Makes sense. And it's not just them, right? Over in Canada, Cameco have to reduce their 2025 output at the massive McArthur River mine down to 14 to 15 million pounds. And that was specifically because of delays with that exact ground freezing process we just talked about.
Right, exactly.
So the biggest players in the world can't even hit their maximum targets.
Right.
And this is where the geopolitics really start fracturing the market, isn't it?
It is. The market is violently bifurcating right now. Governments are waking up to the reality of the math, and they're stepping in to secure their own supply chains.
Just to protect their own grids.
Exactly. In the U.S., you have the Section 232 proclamation establishing a framework for domestic minimum import prices. And even more critically, the 2024 Prohibiting Russian Uranium Imports Act effectively removes 20% of domestic supply from the U.S. utility procurement pool.
That is a massive chunk of supply just gone.
Yeah, and then back in Kazakhstan, they are amending their subsoil use code to restrict Western access to their licenses.
Oh, wow.
And simultaneously, they're signing massive long-term bilateral supply deals with India and China.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, we essentially have a scenario where governments are walling off their uranium from the open market.
Exactly.
We are watching the creation of a two-tier market. Safe, Western-aligned jurisdictions with transparent rule of law like Canada's Athabasca Basin or U.S. domestic projects, they are suddenly commanding a massive premium.
Right.
Because utilities and hyperscalers don't just want uranium. They want uranium they know won't be embargoed, heavily taxed, or restricted by a foreign government 5 years from now.
Which forces us to look at how Wall Street is reacting to all of this in June 2026, because we have this immovable object in the form of locked-in demand and an unstoppable force of geological and geopolitical supply constraints.
Yeah, let's look at the pricing disconnect, because this is where the equity leverage thesis really takes shape.
Yeah.
So in January 2026, spot prices briefly broke $100 a pound. Since then, they've settled into the mid-80 daysers.
Which is still historically very high.
Very high. But the spot price is largely noise, isn't it?
Yeah.
The number that actually matters for mine economics is the long-term contract price. And by the end of the first quarter of 2026, the long-term price hit $90 a pound. That's the highest it's been since 2008.
Yep.
And Goldman Sachs projects the spot price will catch back up to $91 by year-end. But the real story isn't just the price of the metal, is it? It's the companies pulling it out of the dirt.
Absolutely.
Junior uranium miners are up over 40% year-to-date. They are massively outperforming the actual physical uranium spot price, which is only up around 3.6%.
And the divergence there highlights the spectrum of investment. Current producers are obviously capturing that $90 contract price right now.
Right.
But the most dramatic shifts are happening with the development stage companies. These are the companies sitting on permitted deposits that just aren't quite built yet. Their net present value, or NPV, is absolutely skyrocketing.
Let's break down exactly why a developer's value explodes like that, because I think it's a crucial mechanism to understand. If you are a development company, you have a permitted deposit just sitting in the ground.
Yeah.
You likely modeled your entire business case years ago thinking you'd sell that uranium at, say, $60 a pound. Suddenly, long-term contracts are hitting $90.
Yeah.
That extra $30 isn't eaten up by higher construction costs. It represents pure, untaxed future profit falling straight to the bottom line of your valuation model.
That's exactly right. Furthermore, you have the explorers providing incredible asymmetric discovery leverage. The market knows how desperate the math is, which is why we are witnessing an unprecedented drilling boom right now.
How big of a boom?
Well, in Canada's Athabasca Basin alone, over $300 million was raised in just 3 months. They have over 100,000 meters of drilling planned for 2026.
That is wild.
And it's not wildcat prospecting either. Companies like NextGen, ISO Energy, and PurePoint are executing what analysts are calling smarter drilling.
Smarter how?
They are conducting highly targeted exploration backed by capital and technical expertise from major producers, because those major producers desperately need to replace their depleting reserves.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because we have to explain operating leverage for you listening. Imagine owning a bakery where your rent, your ovens, and your baker's wages are totally fixed costs.
Okay, yeah.
If the price you can sell a loaf of bread for goes up by just 10%, that extra revenue doesn't cost you anything more to make. It goes straight to your profit margin.
Exactly.
That's exactly what is happening to these uranium miners. If their cost to pull a pound of uranium out of the ground is $40, the jump from $60 to $90 in the market price completely transforms their profitability.
And that transformation in profitability is attracting serious institutional capital that basically just sat on the sidelines during the 2010s.
I have to admit, though, seeing junior mining stocks jump 40% while the physical metal is only up 3.6%, my immediate instinct is, this is a bubble. This feels like pure speculation driven by AI hype. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, this raises an important question. And honestly, if this were a traditional commodity, your instinct would be entirely correct.
Right, because high prices usually cure high prices.
Exactly. A massive spike in price would immediately incentivize a flood of new supply. Everyone would rush to build new mines, the market would flood, and the price would crash. Boom and bust.
Classic cycle.
But because of those 10 to 15-year timelines we discussed, because of the ground freezing, the permitting, the sulfuric acid shortages, the supply response is structurally delayed until the 2030s.
Oh, wow. So there is no flood of supply coming.
No. Therefore, this is a long-term structural reset, not a speculative flash in the pan. The institutional mindset has fundamentally shifted. The question on Wall Street is no longer, when will uranium prices go up? The question is now, who actually owns the pounds in the ground that we desperately need?
Because whoever owns those pounds controls the bottleneck for the entire global energy transition.
Absolutely.
Let's pull all these threads together. Today, we've unpacked a massive paradigm shift. We've locked in decades-long demand coming from both a global renaissance in traditional nuclear utility power and a completely new price-insensitive buyer in the form of AI tech giants.
We've examined the mathematical impossibility of immediate supply, the 60 million pound annual deficit, the depletion of the down-blended warheads in secondary markets, the fact that the world's biggest producers are physically and strategically cutting back, and a 13-year streak where utilities simply didn't buy enough for the future.
Yeah, and all of that converges right now in June 2026. This marks a tipping point where that deferred contracting panic is finally setting in.
It really is.
For you listening, the reason this matters goes far beyond mining stocks. The future of artificial intelligence, The future of the global digital economy and the future of clean, carbon-free baseload energy literally runs on this single, geologically constrained resource.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on exactly that constraint.
Okay.
We've established today that the physical world has hard limits. It takes 10 to 15 years to discover, permit, freeze the ground, and build a single new conventional uranium mine. But what happens to this highly fragile global arithmetic if a major new technological leap in AI requires a 50% jump in baseload power literally overnight?
Oh, man.
If the ethereal digital world moves at the speed of light, but the heavy industrial physical world takes 15 years to catch up, what breaks first?
It brings us right back to that paradox, doesn't it? The most advanced light-speed digital brains on Earth are entirely tethered to a rock we have to slowly, painstakingly pull from the dirt. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.